All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to break down the language from a really heated moment at a protest. We're going to look at how words get used when the pressure's on, to see what it tells us about how communication works and, how it can completely fall apart.
So bam, we're dropping you right into the middle of it with this line. It's so powerful, so direct, it instantly tells you everything you need to know about the emotional temperature here. This is not a calm debate, right? This is raw anger, and it's the perfect place for us to start.
Now, before we go any further, I just want to be super clear about our goal here. We are not talking about the politics of this protest. We're not picking a side. We're just using this exchange as a kind of case study in communication. We're focusing only on the words, the tactics, and the emotional journey of the conversation. Okay, so the first and most obvious tactic we hear is just direct accusation. This is where it all kicks off. Not with questions, not with trying to persuade anyone, but with a really clear and forceful moral judgment. That word, evil, that's the whole foundation of this initial attack. And you gotta know, that word wasn't chosen by accident. It's an absolute condemnation. There's no gray area, no room for discussion. It immediately frames the officers not as people, but as the villains in the story.
And then, just like that, the conflict pivots. It goes from this big moral accusation to something physical. You have two completely opposite claims happening at the exact same time. Someone saying they were touched, and someone else denying it. This just cranks the tension way up, adding a physical layer to the war of words.
But then, something really fascinating happens. The entire strategy shifts. After that first wave of just pure accusation, there's this pivot to a completely different tactic, an attempt to connect, to appeal to some kind of shared values. This line right here perfectly captures that shift. It's an attempt to completely reframe the whole situation. The language moves from us versus you to a potential we. By suggesting the officers should be marching with them, the protester is trying to find a shared identity, a really powerful attempt to bridge that huge divide. And this question, where's your humanity? This is the real emotional core of that appeal. It's kind of working on two levels. On the surface, sure, it's an accusation. But underneath that, it's really a plea. It's a plea for connection, asking the officers to see a shared human bond that goes beyond their uniforms and their roles.
So what happens when the accusations don't work and the appeals for connection fall flat? Well, the strategy shifts one last time. This is where communication just collapses. It breaks down into its most primal form, raw, unfiltered condemnation.
And here's where it all begins to unravel. The language isn't about making a point anymore, it's just about letting out pure rage. This is the start of a curse, as the protester says, "I hope that shit goes terribly wrong." The curse now has a target. The goal is no longer about creating change or understanding, it's just a wish for failure. Any hope for connection is completely gone, replaced by a wish for things to go wrong.
And then the phrase gets repeated, just to hammer it home, "I hope your rate goes terribly wrong." This repetition, this is the final stage. The dialogue has failed. All that's left is a curse, meant only to express ill will.
So after breaking down these individual moments, what does this entire exchange really tell us about communication in moments of conflict? Let's try to pull it all together. What we've really seen here are three distinct communication strategies, all fired off in rapid succession. The speaker starts with moral blame, then pivots to an appeal for solidarity, and when that fails, it just descends into pure condemnation. It's like an entire emotional journey in just a few seconds.
This short exchange is basically a perfect little snapshot of how high-stakes communication works. It shows this incredibly fast, almost desperate cycle. You start by trying to confront your opponent, then you try to connect with them as a person, and finally, you see the total collapse of that effort into pure rage.
And this brings us to a really big final question. This whole intense exchange shows us just how fragile dialogue can be. It forces us to ask, when our words fail us, when they can no longer connect or persuade, what happens next? When all attempts at communication are totally exhausted, what is actually left in the space between us?